Welcome back, everybody, to the KC Sports Report. I'm your host, Michael Darcy, and today I have the pleasure to be joined by my good friend Josh Fan of ShowMeFootball.com, and in this video, we are going to talk about Chiefs right guard Trey Smith and if he will show up to Chiefs mandatory minicamp. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Chiefs Kingdom, Chiefs mandatory minicamp is June 17th to the 19th, and so far during offseason OTAs, Trey Smith has not been present, and that's really not a big deal. He just signed the franchise tag, which slots him in at a guaranteed $23.4 million, but mandatory minicamp is mandatory, and there's a really big question if Trey Smith is going to show up or not, and Andy Reid kind of talked about it in his press conference, didn't really have anything noteworthy to say. He was basically like, we'll just have to see if it happens. But Josh, I do want to get your thoughts on this situation. And my first question for you is, do you think that Trey Smith will be at mandatory minicamp?
Man, I don't know. Well, at least probably not for the first couple of days, but it's going to be really hard for him to sit out very long because we kind of discussed this the other day. He's a sixth-round pick, formerly a sixth-round pick. He just signed the franchise tag, but most of that money has been unearned to this point. So he doesn't really have a ton of money, and the fines for not showing up are pretty hefty. Andy Reid not saying much about it doesn't really surprise me because Andy Reid does not like talking about players that are not there. It's something that really bothers him, and I can tell you that he's not happy about it. He may not show it necessarily, but he just is not a fan of the whole players not showing up thing.
It's also just such an interesting question to ask the head coach of a football team. Like, do you think that this player is going to show up? It's like, I'm not in charge of paying him. I'm not in charge of, getting those long-term deals worked out. So, reporters kind of put him on the spot when they did ask him about Trey Smith. Like, what do you want him to say? So, I'm not really going to fault Andy Reid in that aspect. I will say that mandatory minicamp is 3 days, and if Trey Smith misses all 3 days, he is going to be fined over $100,000, which, if we're talking about a guy that was drafted in the 6th round, but he also did sign that fully guaranteed franchise tag, so he does have a little bit of money to use, to pay the fines, and he's still trying to get a long-term deal worked out, which the deadline for that is July 15th. But I think that I'm not really worried, even if he does miss mandatory minicamp. I don't think it's a big deal. I really don't. But I think that where we should start to get a little bit maybe concerned or at least pay a little bit more attention to this, if he starts missing training camp, the fines get a lot heftier, and I think that's when we should truly be worried about Trey Smith being, on this team in 2025, but I'm really not worried if he misses, 3 days towards the end of June.
Yeah, and I think that he will show up eventually because it's not like Chris Jones again where he has the money to sit out really for very long. But I can't really blame him for, sitting out because he doesn't have that deal yet. And Brett Veach kind of made it seem like at the beginning of the offseason that it was like a slam dunk that they were bringing him back. And it's just been kind of weird, man. It's like another one of those situations where you think he's going to get extended for sure. And then here we are in the middle of June, and there's still no new contract for Trey Smith and no talks of it even being close.
I mean, Josh, this is just another example of Brett Veach and the Chiefs front office just being full of crap. We hear this every single offseason when it comes to any big-name free agent, that this guy is going to be close to signing, or we're confident we're going to get a deal done. I don't think we're going to see a deal get done by July 15th. And maybe that's crazy, and that's definitely something that I want to talk about in this video. Do you think that Trey Smith signs, extension, or is this going to be something that, we're going to have to go into next offseason and maybe franchise tag him? And we'll talk more about this right after this ad break. The Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway is the place to be. With over 1,500 slot machines, 35 table games, 4 restaurants, and a new ESPN Bet sportsbook, there are plenty of ways to find your fun. For more chances to win, follow them on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Must be 21. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. At Rice Real Estate Group, they're more than just a real estate team. They're a full-service partner in residential, commercial, and investment properties. They specialize in guiding clients through every stage, from the buying and selling process to handling complex, short sale situations with ease. Their passion lies in the personal one-on-one care they bring to every client relationship, ensuring each experience is tailored, smooth, and successful. Here it's all about building trust, delivering expertise, and ensuring every client feels valued throughout their journey. For more information, call Marla Rice at 816-819-9333. Huge thanks to the sponsors that support this channel all off-season long. Now, Josh, getting back to the question that I posed before the ad break, do you think that Trey Smith is going to get a long-term deal done by July 15th?
My gut right now says probably not. I think the Chiefs franchise tag him for this year. I think, based on their history, this is how they do things. He's going to play this year on the franchise tag, whether he's happy about it or not. Chiefs will revisit next year, and then I think a trade is probably more likely than him getting signed long term by then.
Which, Josh, why? I don't understand why you would franchise tag him this year. Going into free agency, he was the top offensive guard on the market, the top offensive lineman on the market. His trade value might have been at its apex, and then next offseason, he's going to be a year older. Knock on wood, hopefully he's not injured. I mean, his trade value is probably never going to be as high as it was this past offseason.
I think, the thing with Trey Smith, and if he is to still be around here next year, after the franchise tag, either it tells me that, okay, the Chiefs just couldn't get a deal figured out, and then eventually they do. Or I think the other way they could go is they've only, because we discussed this the other day, how maybe it was because they knew they were trading Joe Thuney or moving off of Joe Thuney, and they did, but they still wanted to keep some level of stability on the offensive line for this year just because there are so many new faces, and kind of having a veteran anchor and Trey Smith on that offensive line is maybe something that they wanted for this year, but they're not necessarily interested in extending him long term, which, if that's the plan, I can see that. I can understand that.
I can definitely see that plan, and honestly, I think it might be a highly realistic option that no one else is really talking about, and I think that we're both in agreement. I don't think that a deal is going to be done by July 15th. Now, to answer the question if he's going to skip out training camp or miss any training camp, if he does, it's going to be minimal. I think he might miss 1 or 2 days of training camp, but those fines are going to really start to rack up. And, for a guy that's never really made any generational money until this season, it's not going to make sense to pay all those fines.
No, not at all. I think he's going to sit out because that's what players do. But eventually he's going to have to show up. He just doesn't have the money to sit out for very long.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And so to kind of recap this video, Trey Smith might not be at mandatory minicamp, but even if he doesn't show up, guys, I don't think it is any reason whatsoever to be concerned. Again, even though it is mandatory, a lot of guys might not end up showing up. I mean, I guess maybe not a lot of guys might not end up showing up, but I don't think that if Trey Smith misses out on 3 days in the middle of June, that's not training camp, we really shouldn't be worried about the future until he gives us any reason. Until he doesn't get a deal signed, by, I guess, July 15th, that's when we should start to worry. But, Josh, I think that we did a really good job kind of talking about that in this video. And so that's really all we got. My final question for you is, where can the people find your stuff?
You can find me here on YouTube channel named Show Me Football. Check out the website, showmefootball.com, for more. Last but not least, follow me on Twitter at ShowMeFB.
And guys, all that stuff will be linked in the description of this video. Hit that like button, subscribe to this channel for more daily Chiefs coverage. And until next time, guys, thank you for watching this video. And as always, go Chiefs.